Adart Solutions. Add-on desired.
Hello viewers, welcome to Adart Solutions Daily News Analysis Session. I am Lokesh Penugunda. We'll begin our session with a quote. Don't limit your challenges, challenge your limits. The first article of today's session is about unpaid work. In general, in many of the countries, what we observe is women being disproportionately carrying higher burden of unpaid work, unpaid services. These services are mainly for domestic purposes and looking after the children, old and the disabled. So, women generally carry disproportionately higher burden of unpaid work, and though this unpaid work generally benefits the household and the persons in the household, this is not taken into consideration in the economy and while dealing and while designing the policies. So now we'll see what are the concerns raised due to this unpaid work. First, the work which is done by the women in the households is not taken into the consideration in economy policies, and it is generally seen as invisible work, and this work is generally repetitive and often boring, and it is often for 24 hours a day, and there are no benefits, that is no salary, no holidays, and not even retirement for the woman who works in the households. Also, due to spending majority of their time for all these works in the unpaid services, the amount of free time that will be left to the women is low, and due to this the opportunities for the women will also be reduced. So there will be a restricted opportunities for women to grow in any field. Also, most of this time women working for unpaid work and for family work is not voluntary. This is mainly seen as in the nature of the scope of the patriarchy. In a patriarchal society, women are generally expected to take after the elderly and look after the household. So this work is repetitive, boring, no benefits. It restricts the opportunities of the women. Women does this unwillingly, mainly due to patriarchy, and also there is unequal division of unpaid work, with women doing lot more work compared to men. So these are many of the concerns raised by women who are working in the households for their families. But recently in the electoral politics, we've seen the political parties such as Kamal Hassan led party in Tamil Nadu and such other political parties all over the country, which are not only recognizing the work of the women in the households, but they are also raising concerns about the efforts being wasted by the women, and also the negligible benefits the government is providing for these efforts of the women. So the author is telling that the recognition which is given by the political parties, though it's a welcome move, the idea of giving wages to the women for doing their household work is not, because the author is stating that there are many challenges, many issues concerned with provision of money, provision of wages to women who are working for their domestic households. So let's look into the challenges for the implementation. First is affordability. Providing thousands of rupees to each woman will amount to crores of rupees, and already as the state governments are reeling under the COVID burden, it will be difficult for the states to provide money for these households. So there is an issue of affordability. Also there is an issue of calculation, because in some households women not only perform household work but also does full-time job, sometimes part-time job. So calculation of money to be given to this woman will be difficult, as to how much money would you be giving for women who will be working continuously and completely for the household, and for women working part-time along with households, and for women working full-time along with taking care of the households. So the calculation will be an issue. Also it disincentivizes women to work outside, because let's say a political party is giving women 5,000 rupees a month for taking care of their households. So this disincentivizes the women to look for work outside, as they are able to earn the money even while looking after their family. So it will reduce the labor supply in the market. So there are multiple disadvantages to this move, and also it confirms that the women have to work for the families, like it will make this work obligatory, it will take the work of women granted, and it will prevent their growth. So these are some concerns. So what the author is suggesting is that rather than providing wages on monthly basis, you can give women pension benefits after 60 years, that is pension benefits to all women who are above 60 years, no matter their financial strength. Also, the author is giving various suggestions which the government can adopt to make the life of women who are working in the households easier. So now we'll see the suggestions. First, the author is stating that government can recognize the unpaid work. So the author is stating that the unpaid work can be calculated by using the time use survey, and also the government can take steps to reduce the burden on the women. Government can provide better infrastructure facilities. Government can provide gas and water connections at home and water supply at home. And government can also make the basic services such as transportation, education accessible to women, so their capabilities can be increased so that they can work from home if they want to. So these are some suggestions the author is providing. Also, the author is stating that there is a need for incentivizing and disincentivizing the workforce, disincentivizing the work done for unpaid services to both men and women. This can be done by making mandatory to males to take training to look after the households. And government can also increase the opportunities for women, and also will give more amount of time to women by taking all these steps. And now we'll see the relation between the unpaid work and the economy. In economy, when you're calculating the gross domestic product, you will calculate all the goods and services produced in the market. But when it comes to households which provides not only goods and also services to their own family members, this is not considered while calculating the GDP. So there is a need to incorporate it in the gross domestic product. Also, the families who look after the welfare of the family members is important, because otherwise the members of the family who will become workers, entrepreneurs, and who also work in many other sectors could not be able to give their best, could not be productive. So the household work which is unpaid takes care of the family. If this household work is not done by unpaid work, then the firms which are paying the wages to the workers have to increase the wages. Let's say if the worker is getting their food, if getting other services which are provided by the family by private persons, then the worker would demand more amount of wages. So the profits of the company will be reduced. So it is important for the country and the companies to take care of the employees, and also unpaid work is important for taking care of the needed, which are children, elderly, and even the disabled persons. So there is a relation between the unpaid work and the economy. So there is a need to recognize and even appreciate and even take care and support the unpaid work through whatever government can do. So what is the way forward? Public policies should be brought in that could reduce the burden on the women who are doing this unpaid work, and also the public policies could be used to increase the productivity of the women and excluding the work done by females in the households amounts to male bias. So there is an urgent need to review the GDP calculation and take necessary steps so as to reduce the negative impacts on the women. Next is talking about government's new scrappage policy and the various benefits that we are expected from this policy. Ministry of Road Transport is coming up with a scrappage policy. Now we will see the provisions of this policy. Whatever the private vehicles which are about 20 years and commercial vehicles which are 15 years, these vehicles which are older than the specified age group have to get mandatory fitness certificate. So what happens is, let's say a vehicle which is used by a private family is more than 20 years. Now it has to get a mandatory fitness certificate. This will be provided by automated vehicle fitness centers of the government. So if this private vehicle which is used by an individual or a family could not pass the required tests, then this vehicle will be sent to scrapyard and this will be given monetary benefits by the government. Otherwise, if let's say the vehicle is passing off all the standards, then the vehicle will get 5 years fitness certificate and can continue to work, can continue to be used for 5 more years. Otherwise, it has to be sent to the scrapyard. This is expected to provide monetary incentive. The government is expected to provide monetary incentives to the owners for scrapping their vehicles. So, in brief, let's say there is a vehicle, it's a private one. If it's more than 20 years, it has to be sent for fitness center to check its fitness. If it is able to clear all the tests, then it will be given a 5-year fitness certificate. If not, it will be sent to the scrapyard. Government will provide benefits for the vehicle owners for scrapping their vehicles. So this is what the scrappage policy of the government means. So there are many challenges to make this scrappage policy successful. First, there is a need for credible automated fitness centers at the state level, because if a vehicle owner feels that their own vehicle will not be able to pass the test, then this vehicle owner may try to bribe the authorities of this fitness center. So there is a need for a credible automated fitness center at the state level. And also there is a need to send whatever the vehicles which could not pass this fitness test directly to the scrapyard. Otherwise, what could happen is these vehicles can be sent to smaller towns which does not have much stringent checkups, or these towns might not have necessary resources to check the vehicles and to scrap the vehicles. So these are some challenges. So to incentivize scrapping, governments at the state level can provide concessions for road tax and registration. So what is this concessions? Let's say person A has sent his vehicle to the scrapyard. After leaving his vehicle, he would need a new vehicle. So if the government of the state provides tax incentives, then Mr. A will be incentivized, will be encouraged to buy a new vehicle. So there is a need for the states to provide these concessions. Also, there is a need from the automobile firms to provide discounts. So all these will lead to increase in the adoption and increase in the buying of new vehicles by the by people who send their cars or vehicles to the scrapyard. The government should take more efforts, because during the motor vehicle agreement, we have seen that many states have diluted the agreement, the laws which are made by the parliament. This motor vehicles agreement has provided stringent provisions and penalties for those who are not following the motor vehicle rules. But in many states, due to their electoral benefits, due to their own other extra benefits, the states have diluted these laws. So this act could not be executed properly. So now, if we want the scrappage policy to work efficiently, to be successful, there is a need to collaborate with the states to make it successful. Next, there are nearly 1.7 million heavy commercial vehicles that are running on the roads without fitness certificates. As these commercial vehicles are more polluting than the normal vehicles, it is important for the government to make these heavy commercial vehicles apply for the fitness certificate, and if they fail to get the certificates, they should be sent to the scrap yards. Next, there is a need for the government to provide financial support and financial benefits to small operators of commercial vehicles, because if their vehicles are seized, if their vehicles are sent to the scrapyard, they might not be able to buy newer vehicles without support from the government, without financial support. So this is a need the government has to take. So these are some of the challenges that the government has to take to make the scrappage policy successful. Now let's see the various advantages that are expected by the successful implementation of this act. First, internationally, this scrappage policy is being taken up to rejuvenate the economies, that is, by improving the output of the automobile firms, by increasing the profits of the automobile firms, by improving the economy as a whole. This scrappage policy helps the governments in many countries. This is important in the context of COVID-19, because due to COVID-19, what we have witnessed is loss of livelihoods, shutting down of businesses. So this scrappage policy will be useful to increase the profits of the automobile firms and to increase the jobs as a whole. Next, it will support the transmission to electric vehicles, because let's say a person A is going to a car showroom. He knows that after 20 years, if it's a private vehicle, then it will be sent to mandatory fitness certificate center. So what he would do is, he would, rather than buying a petrol or diesel car, he would prefer electric vehicles, because electric vehicles are not polluting. So he can use this car more than 20 years without any checkups. So it would lead to transmission to electric vehicles. Next, it would lead to promotion of lesser fuel emissions, and it would lead to lesser emissions. So the countries can easily achieve the emission target set up by the Paris Climate Agreement of 2015. Also, as in India, automobile sector contributes 7.5% of GDP, and due to scrappage policy, its contribution will increase, its investments will increase, its job provisions will increase. So it is expected to highly benefit the automobile sector of India. Also, it will reduce fuel burden, because older vehicles are generally more polluting and less efficient, and also by shifting to electric vehicles, we would require lesser amount of fuels, that is fossil fuels, that are petrol or diesel. So by reducing the input, by reducing the intake of petrol and diesel in the country, we would be requiring to import lesser fuels from other countries. So will benefit in this case. Also, by buying newer vehicles and by scrapping older vehicles, the fuel efficiency in the automobile sector will increase. So these are some of the advantages that are widely expected from the scrappage policy. Now we will see the way forward. First is incentivize the vehicle makers to increase the efficiency. This is needed because the very objective of the government is to increase the efficiency of the vehicles and decrease the pollution. So by government doing and by promoting, incentivizing the vehicle makers to produce vehicles more efficiently and to produce vehicles which can run more efficiently, this would lead to all gains to the government, to the maker and also to the customer. So this is one thing that we are expected to do. Next is there is a need for ecological scrapping, because when we are following ecological scrapping, the amount of recoveries we can make from the scrapping will be more, as the recovery of products from the automobile sector is more. It will lead to lesser amount of pollution. Also, if the recovery of products is more, we would require less mining, as we would require less amount of resources to make the cars. As there is lesser mining, as there is lesser pollution, as there is more recovery, we will reduce the pressure on the environment. So there is a need to incentivize car makers, there is a need to promote ecological scrapping. Now we will see the next article. There is an article talking about rising poverty. According to Pew Research Center report, COVID-19 has disproportionately impacted the poor in India and China. It has stated that due to India's contraction of its economy, 7.5 crore people are pushed to poverty. So what is poverty in this report? It has taken poverty as a person, if he is able to get less than $2 per day, then he is termed as poor. And nearly 7.5 crore people in India are forced into poverty due to COVID impact. And in China, the report is stating that though there is no contraction in the economy, there is low growth. And due to low growth, nearly 10 lakh people in China are forced into poverty. Due to newer poor people, the total amount of poor people in the country reached 13.4 crore, thus reversing whatever gains we were able to achieve in the economic progress. Through the economic progress, we were able to see in the last 1-2 decades. So due to the COVID impact, whatever economic gains we have got, whatever the number of people we are able to lift from poverty to middle class and upper middle class, they are again becoming poor. So these are some concerns. And next, it has stated that due to COVID impact and 10 lakh people becoming poor, the amount of poor people in China increased to 40 lakh. And also it has reduced the number of middle class people living in India. It has stated that nearly 3.2 crores to 6 crores people are expected to be reduced from the middle class arena. And what is this middle class categorization? People who get $10 to $20 income per day are considered as middle income people. Similarly, the amount of middle class reduced from 50.4 crore to 49.3 crore in China. So there is disproportionate income when we are comparing, when we are seeing the poor, but also there is an impact when we are considering the middle class families in India. And now we will see the various issues that are raised due to the poverty in both countries. The Pew Research Center has done this assignment using the World Bank's Powell Chart net database, and to compare the data between India and China, the assessment, the analyzement process has taken many assumptions, but still there is stark economic disparities between the countries of India and China. As we've seen earlier, the amount of poor people in China is just 40 lakh, whereas number of poor in India is nearly 13.5 crore. So there is still economic disparities which are starkly in contrast. Also, there is widening inequality between the two countries. Also, the report has stated that the lower income households are disproportionately impacted compared to those in the middle class section, and also compared to those who are rich. It is stated that people with lower education, lower wages lost most number of jobs, and they are disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. And this report also states that the fiscal support which is provided by the government is underwhelming, that is not enough. When we compare to the fiscal support the government provided to the corporates during the pre-pandemic, when we compare those corporate tax cuts to the support it has given to the migrants and to the poor, it is very less. So the fiscal support is not satisfactory, and we can understand the impact of COVID-19 by the huge demand for work under National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. There is huge demand for work under this act, mainly in the rural hinterlands of the country. So what we can understand is the rural hinterlands of the country are impacted more, mainly because of loss of livelihood and loss of jobs. The report states that whatever the problems which are existing needs to be handled, and also to handle this and to move forward, there are more amount of challenges the country have to face. First is COVID cases rising in the country. We've seen from the last 1 week that the number of cases in the country have been hugely increasing, especially in states such as Maharashtra, Punjab and such other states. So this is a challenge. And also the economic recovery which is set to see in this year is still not completed. That is, whatever the contraction we have seen, the GDP of the country, the economy of the country is just now able to recover, and it is not recovered completely. And if the cases are increasing, it will be delaying the economic recovery, and it would further increase the amount of poor people in the country. So these are some challenges, and it will test the government's policy of lives versus livelihood. So what the government will do in the future, we'll have to see. Next, we'll have you a brief idea about the free movement regime between India and Myanmar. This is in the context of a report in the paper which stated that India has closed the Myanmar border. So first, we need to understand the background of the border. India and Myanmar share an unfenced border of nearly 1643 kilometers. So states such as Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Mizoram and Manipur shares border with Myanmar. And also with Myanmar, we have an unique agreement called as free movement regime. So what is this free movement regime? It is a unique travel arrangement between India and Myanmar. It allows people mainly from the border areas, that is people who are generally tribals living in these border areas, to travel 16 kilometers across the border without visa restrictions. That is, let's say this is the border between India and Myanmar, and many tribal people live near the border of India and Myanmar on both sides. So this free movement regime allows people from India to Myanmar up to 16 kilometers without any visas, and they can stay till 14 days in the other country. Similarly, people from Myanmar also can visit India and can stay for 14 days, but they can only enter into India for 16 kilometers. So this is the free movement regime between India and Myanmar. This is mainly taken up to help the tribes across the border to maintain their age-old ties. So this is the reason for the agreement. And now we will see prelims practice questions. Myanmar shares border with which of the following countries? Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam and Bangladesh. Which of the above statements given above are either or correct? The answer is A, because Vietnam and Cambodia does not share any border with Myanmar. Next, Sustainable Development of Little Andaman Island Vision Document is released by Niti Aayog, Ministry of Shipping, Andaman and Nicobar Islands Integrated Development Corporation, committee set up for development of Andaman Islands. It was Niti Aayog who gave this report. We've taken a question from 2018 prelims paper. The staple commodities of export by East India Company from Bengal in the middle of 18th century were raw cotton, oil seeds and opium, sugar, salt, zinc and lead, copper, silver, gold, spices and tea, cotton, silk, saltpeter and opium. The answer is D. Next, we come to mains practice questions. Explain the concerns raised to the idea of providing wages to the household wives. Suggest alternative policies. What are the advantages of newly enumerated vehicle scrapping policy? Write it in 150 words and upload it in the comment section and verify it. So with this, we come to the end of this session. Thank you. Share this session's details with your friends.
Add-on solutions. Add-on desired.